The massive alien ships appeared in the sky above new like dark clouds blocking out the sun. Captain Park stood on the observation deck of the colony's main defense station, watching the fleet settle into orbit. He had seen many things in his 15 years of military service, but nothing like this. The ships were enormous, each one larger than the entire human settlement below. They hummed with power that made the air itself feel heavy. Received the message within minutes. The Empire demanded his presence at a diplomatic meeting. He gathered his officers and headed to the colony's central building where Ambassador was already preparing. Was a thin man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been trying to make contact with alien civilizations for years, hoping for peaceful relations. Now his worst fears were becoming real. Lieutenant Minyu walked beside as they entered the meeting hall. Minyu was younger, barely 30, but he knew more about military history than anyone else in the colony. He carried a filled with information about human weapons and tactics, hoped they would not need any of it. They materialized in the center of the room using some kind of teleportation technology. High Commander appeared first. He was tall and insect-like, with 4 arms and a hard shell that gleamed like polished metal. His eyes were compound and multifaceted, reflecting the light in strange patterns. Behind him stood Overseer Al, a smaller alien with pale blue skin and too many fingers on each hand. Spoke through a translation device that made his clicking sounds into human words. His voice was cold and mechanical. Humans of New, the Empire has observed your colony for the required period. You are now ordered to accept integration into the Empire. You have 48 hours to surrender your weapons and accept our authority. Resistance will be met with corrective action. Ambassador stepped forward. His hands shook slightly, but his voice remained steady. High Commander, we request more time to consider. We must contact Earth and discuss this with our government. Surely we can negotiate terms that benefit both our peoples. Made a sound that the translator rendered as laughter. Negotiation. You misunderstand your position. The Empire does not negotiate with primitive species. You will comply or you will be forced to comply. There is no third option. Felt anger rising in his chest but kept his face neutral. He had 500 soldiers under his command. The fleet carried at least 10,000 troops, maybe more. The odds were impossible. Tried again. Perhaps we could demonstrate our capabilities. We are not as primitive as you believe. Our technology may be different, but it is effective. This time Multiple made the laughing sound. Al spoke for the first time, his voice high and whining. We have scanned your entire colony. Your weapons use chemical propellants. You fire small metal projectiles using explosive powder. These are museum pieces. Our children learn about such weapons in history classes about barbaric civilizations. You might as well threaten us with sharpened sticks. Minyu could not stay silent anymore. Our can penetrate most known armor types. Our missiles have smart guidance systems. We have defensive positions throughout the colony. Turned his huge eyes toward Minyu. Yes, magnetic acceleration of solid matter. We encountered such weapons 3,000 years ago. They are ineffective against modern shielding. Your missiles will be destroyed by our point defense systems before they travel 10 meters. As for your defensive positions, our graviton cannons will reduce them to dust in seconds. The meeting continued for another hour, but nothing changed. They would not compromise. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and saw no reason to treat Earth's colony any differently. They left the same way they arrived, vanishing in columns of light. After they were gone, gathered his command staff. Private Lee was there, her young face showing the fear they all felt. Sergeant Song stood with her arms crossed, already thinking about defensive strategies. Corporal tapped nervously on his, running calculations about their ammunition supplies. We cannot win a direct fight, said simply. Their shields will stop everything we have. Their weapons are more powerful than ours. They have more soldiers and better ships. So we surrender? Asked quietly. No, said firmly. We fight. We make them pay for every meter of ground. We show them that humans do not bow easily. Minyu was staring at his, scrolling through files. Captain, there might be something. It is a long shot, probably crazy, but there might be a way. Everyone turned to look at him. Minyu continued. When the colony was established, the first settlers brought items from Earth, historical items. Museums sent collections to preserve human culture. I remember seeing the inventory. There are old weapons in storage, very old weapons. How old? Asked. 19th century, from Earth's industrial age, before we had energy weapons or smart missiles, before we went to space at all. Frowned. How would ancient weapons help us? The just said our current weapons are useless. Minyu smiled slightly. That is exactly why they might work. They have been fighting advanced civilizations for thousands of years. Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons and high-velocity projectiles. Their armor is built to resist plasma and particle beams. But what if we use something they never prepared for? Something so old and simple that their technology is not calibrated to stop it. Understood immediately. Show me these weapons, all of them. We have 48 hours to prepare. As the meeting broke up, looked out the window at the ships hanging in the sky. They looked unbeatable, invincible. But he had learned long ago that every enemy had weaknesses. The trick was finding them before it was too late. Time was running out. Captain followed Lieutenant Minyu through the old storage facility on the edge of the colony. The building smelled like dust and preservatives. Dr. Jinnahan met them at the entrance. She was the colony's historian, a woman in her 50s who had spent her career studying Earth's past. She looked worried. Captain Park, Lieutenant told me why you are here. I must warn you that these weapons are antiques. They have not been fired in over 200 years. Some were made in the 1880s on Earth. Can they still work? Asked. Jinnah led them deeper into the storage area. They were preserved perfectly. The colonists wanted to maintain them as working examples of human engineering, but I do not know if they will function under combat conditions. She stopped in front of 3 large covered shapes. With help from Minyu, she pulled off the protective covers, stared at the machines revealed underneath. They were strange and beautiful in their mechanical simplicity. Each weapon had multiple barrels arranged in a circle around a central axis. There were hand cranks on the side and large metal shields to protect the operator. Guns, Minyu said with reverence in his voice. Model 1883, caliber 45-70. They were some of the first rapid-fire weapons humans ever made. You turn the crank and the barrels rotate, firing about 200 rounds per minute. Walked around one of the guns. It looked primitive compared to modern weapons. Everything was mechanical, nothing electronic. Explain to me how these will help us against energy shields. Minyu pulled up diagrams on his. Shields work by generating magnetic and energy fields. They deflect plasma bolts and energy beams. They can even stop projectiles because those move so fast that the shield can detect and react to them. But these guns fire simple lead bullets using black powder. The bullets are slow by modern standards, only about 400 meters per second. They are solid, uncharged metal. The shields are not designed to stop them, because nobody uses this kind of weapon anymore. You are guessing, said. Yes, sir, but it is a good guess based on everything I know about their technology. Their shields evolved to counter the threats they faced. This is not a threat they ever faced. Jinnah spoke up. We have ammunition for them, original cartridges also preserved, about 6,000 rounds total. After that, we would need to manufacture more. Made his decision quickly. They had no other options. Get these guns to defensive positions. Lieutenant Minyu, you will oversee their deployment. Corporal, I need you to start manufacturing ammunition immediately. Dr. Jinnah, teach my soldiers how to operate these weapons. The next 36 hours were chaotic. Corporal set up production lines using the colony's industrial fabricators. The machines were designed to make parts for buildings and vehicles, but them to produce lead bullets and brass cartridge cases. He mixed chemicals to create black powder, following recipes from old Earth databases. It was dangerous work and 2 small explosions damaged equipment, but he kept going. The 3 guns were mounted on defensive positions overlooking the main approach to the colony. This was a natural valley that any ground force would need to use. Sergeant Song planned the entire defensive layout. She positioned the guns to create overlapping fields of fire. She built false weak points in other areas to lure them toward the valley. Private Lee trained on one of the guns. The hand crank was stiff at first but became smoother with use. She learned to traverse the barrels left and right, up and down. Dr. Jinnah taught her about clearing jams and loading the ammunition hoppers, practiced until her arms ached and her hands developed blisters. Above them, surveillance drones watched everything. High Commander received constant reports from his intelligence officers. They analyzed the human preparations with amusement. "They are mounting rotary projectile weapons," one officer reported. "Pre-space age technology. Fire rate approximately 200 rounds per minute. Muzzle velocity under 500 meters per second. Threat assessment, negligible." Examine the data. These weapons could not penetrate even our armor. Why would they rely on such primitive devices? "Perhaps they have nothing else," another officer suggested. "Their desperation is showing." Decided to make the battle a demonstration. He ordered camera drones to record everything. The footage would be broadcast across the sector, showing other primitive species what happened to those who resisted the Empire. He felt confident, almost bored. This would not be a battle but an execution. In the colony, Captain gathered all his soldiers. 500 men and women stood in ranks before him. Many were young, some were veterans who had fought in Earth's border conflicts. All of them knew the odds. "Tomorrow they will attack," said. His voice carried across the assembly. "They believe we will fall quickly. They believe our weapons are useless and our courage will break. They are wrong. We are human. We are the descendants of people who survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We are the species that went from wooden ships to starships in just a few centuries. We do not surrender easily." He paused, looking at their faces. "Some of us will die tomorrow, maybe all of us, but we will make them remember this day. We will show the galaxy that Earth's children do not bow to tyrants. Every who comes into our valley will learn that lesson the hard way." The soldiers cheered. It was not joyful but determined. They were afraid but ready. That night, Lieutenant Minu checked the guns one final time. Each barrel was clean and oiled. The ammunition hoppers were full. The hand cranks turned smoothly. He ran his hand over the cold metal and thought about the people who built these weapons over 400 years ago. They could never have imagined their creations would be used in a battle against alien invaders on a distant world. Private manned the communication station. He monitored transmissions, though most were encrypted. He could tell they were organizing their assault force. The attack would come at dawn. Sat beside her gun, unable to sleep. She had written a letter to her family on Earth, though she knew they might never receive it. In the letter she explained that she was not afraid. She was proud to defend her home and her people. She hoped that was true. As the first light of dawn touched the sky, alarms began to sound throughout the colony. The assault was beginning. They descended through the morning sky like falling stars. High Commander watched from his command ship, surrounded by officers and recording equipment. This moment would be remembered across the Empire. The crushing of human resistance would serve as a warning to every other primitive species in the sector. "First wave deploying," an officer announced. 2,000 shock troops with full shield coverage, hover tank support and aerial units standing by. Nodded with satisfaction. 2,000 soldiers against 500 humans. The battle would be over in minutes. He had not even committed his full force. The remaining 8,000 troops would watch and learn. On the ground, the soldiers formed up with practiced efficiency. Each warrior wore powered armor that enhanced their strength and speed. Their personal energy shields shimmered around them, barely visible distortions in the air. They carried plasma rifles and particle beam weapons. Some had portable shield generators that could protect entire squads. They moved in tight formations, unconcerned about human defenses. Captain watched through binoculars from his command post. The alien force was impressive and terrifying. Their technology was centuries beyond anything humans possessed. For a moment, doubt crept into his mind. Then he pushed it away. Doubt would not save them. Only action would. "All units report ready," Sergeant said beside him. She monitored communications from every defensive position. The guns were manned and loaded. Conventional weapons were prepared as backup. Every soldier knew their role. The advance began. They entered the valley in waves, their formation perfect. Hover tanks glided above the ground, their graviton cannons charging with blue light. Aerial support craft circled overhead like predatory birds. The sound of their engines rumbled through the air. Private watched his sensors. Enemy forces entering, range 1,200 meters and closing. "Hold fire," ordered. His voice was calm, but his heart pounded. Everything depended on the next few minutes. "Wait for my command." They continued forward. Through their helmet displays, they could see the human defensive positions clearly. Their tactical computers marked targets and calculated firing solutions. To them, this was routine, another easy conquest. At 800 meters, some began firing. Plasma bolts streaked across the valley, hitting human fortifications. The energy weapons carved through concrete and metal like paper. Small explosions erupted along the defensive line. "Steady," said. "Let them get closer." Crouched beside her gun, her hands gripped the crank handle. Sweat ran down her face despite the cool morning air. She could see the now with her own eyes, not just on sensors. They looked invincible. The enemy reached 600 meters, then 500. Their formation remained tight. They had no reason to spread out when their shields made them untouchable. "Now, Captain," asked. 400 meters. They were close enough that could see individual details of their armor. He thought about all the people depending on him. The colonists hiding in shelters. The soldiers waiting for his order. The future of humanity's presence in this part of space. "Fire," he said quietly. "Fire," shouted into the communications net. Began cranking. The gun mechanism engaged with a metallic clicking sound. The first barrel aligned with the firing chamber. The hammer fell on the first cartridge. The black powder ignited. The lead bullet shot forward. Then the next barrel rotated into position. Click, bang, click, bang. The rotation speed increased. The sound merged into a continuous thunder unlike anything in modern warfare. It was mechanical and primal and terrifying. All three guns opened fire simultaneously. 600 rounds per minute poured down into the valley. The air filled with smoke and noise. Brass cartridge cases flew from the ejection ports, bouncing and ringing on the ground. The first soldiers did not understand what was happening. They saw smoke and primitive weapons and felt no fear. Their shields would protect them. Their armor was impenetrable. They continued advancing. Then the bullets arrived. The lead projectiles passed through the energy shields without slowing. The shields did not detect them as threats. There was no energy signature to deflect, no high velocity to trigger defensive protocols. The bullets were just fast-moving pieces of metal, too simple for the advanced technology to recognize. They struck armor at 400 meters per second. The armor was designed to disperse energy and deflect plasma. Against solid kinetic impact, it crumpled. The heavy lead bullets punched through chest plates and helmets. Soldiers fell. Not one or two, dozens, then hundreds. The shock went through the ranks like electricity. Their tactical computers showed soldiers dropping but could not identify the threat. The sensors detected primitive projectile weapons but could not explain why shields were failing. Warriors who had never felt fear in combat suddenly experienced confusion and terror. "What is happening?" shouted aboard his command ship. His displays showed casualties mounting impossibly fast. "Why are the shields not working?" "Unknown, Commander," an officer said frantically. "The projectiles are passing through as if the shields are not active, but the shields are functioning normally. They just cannot detect the threat." Cranked her gun steadily. The barrel assembly spun in front of her. She traversed the weapon back and forth across the packed formation. Each burst cut down another group of aliens. Their shields shimmered uselessly as bullets tore through them. She felt no joy, only grim determination. The second gun crew was led by a soldier named. He maintained a steady rhythm on the crank, not too fast to cause jams. His loader, a woman named, kept the ammunition hopper full. Together they created a wall of lead that they could not cross. The third gun position was higher on the ridge. From there, they had a perfect angle on the hover tanks. The heavy bullets struck the lightly armored vehicles, punching through power systems and control panels. 3 tanks exploded in rapid succession. The rest retreated in disorder. The advance stopped. Then it reversed. Warriors who had never retreated before turned and ran. Their officers shouted commands, but discipline broke. They had trained for modern warfare against energy weapons and smart missiles. This was something from ancient history, and they had no response. In 3 minutes, the first assault wave was destroyed. Over 600 aliens lay dead or wounded in the valley. The rest fled back toward their landing zones in chaos. The colonial forces had suffered only light casualties from the initial plasma barrage. Silence fell across the battlefield. Smoke drifted through the valley. The smell of black powder hung in the air. Human soldiers stared at each other in amazement. They had survived. More than survived. They had won. Watched the retreat through his binoculars. He felt no celebration, only exhaustion. This was just the first wave. They had 8,000 more troops. Now they knew their shields were useless. They would adapt and return. The real battle was still coming. On the command ship stood frozen. For the first time in his long military career, he had experienced defeat, and at the hands of primitives using weapons from their barbaric past. His officers stared at him, waiting for orders. He said nothing. He could not process what had happened. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson it had forgotten long ago. Sometimes old methods worked better than new ones. High Commander refused to accept what had happened. He stood in his command center surrounded by confused officers and frightened technicians. The recorded footage of the battle played on multiple screens. Each replay showed the same impossible result: his elite troops being slaughtered by primitive weapons that should not have worked. "Explain this," he demanded. His voice was cold and dangerous. "Tell me how our technology failed." The chief scientist, a thin with pale markings on his shell, spoke carefully. "Commander, the human weapons fire solid projectiles. Lead metal formed into bullets. They use chemical explosions for propulsion. Our shields were designed to deflect energy-based weapons and high-velocity smart projectiles. These bullets are neither. They are too simple. The shields do not recognize them as threats and therefore do not stop them." "Then recalibrate the shields," snapped. "That will take days, perhaps weeks. The entire fleet's defensive systems must be. We do not have that time." Turned to his military advisors. Several officers stepped back from his gaze. "I will not retreat from a human colony. We will attack again. 5,000 troops this time. Overwhelm their positions through superior numbers. Destroy those weapons before they can fire." "Commander," one brave officer said, "we have already lost 600 soldiers. If we attack again with the same tactics, casualties could be even worse." "Then use different tactics," said. "Spread out the formations. Flank their positions. Use our aerial units to suppress their weapons. We have the numbers and the technology. We cannot lose to humans using weapons from their primitive past. Back in the colony, Captain did not celebrate the victory. He knew they would return. Lieutenant Minu was already planning for the next assault. They gathered in the command post with other officers. "They will adapt," Minu said. "They will spread out their formations to reduce casualties. They will try to flank us or use aerial bombardment." Sergeant pointed to the map. "We can reposition one gun to cover the eastern approach. If they try to flank through the forest, we will catch them there." Corporal entered, covered in soot and looking exhausted. "I have manufactured another 4,000 rounds, but we are running low on raw materials. After the next battle, we may not be able to make more." "We use what we have," said. "Each bullet counts. Each we stop is one less we face later." Private sat in the corner, cleaning her gun. Her hands were blistered from cranking, but she worked carefully. The weapon had saved her life and the lives of everyone in the colony. She would maintain it properly. Specialist, the colony's medical officer, reported casualties. 15 wounded from the plasma fire, 3 serious. "We can treat them, but our medical supplies are limited." Lieutenant Park arrived from the perimeter. He was in charge of the scout teams. "Forces are reorganizing. I count at least 5,000 troops preparing for another assault. They are spreading out more this time, and they have brought their aerial units forward." The second assault began 2 hours later. This time they came from multiple directions. 3,000 troops advanced through the main valley, but now they moved in dispersed formation instead of tight ranks. Another 2,000 came through the forest on the eastern flank. Aerial attack craft swept ahead, firing missiles at the human positions. The battle was more chaotic this time. The guns still dealt terrible damage to those who could not hide from the sustained fire, cranked her weapon steadily, walking the bullets across the scattered enemy formation. Soldiers fell, but not in the massive numbers from the first assault. The dispersed formation meant each burst of fire hit fewer targets. The eastern flank was harder. The single gun there was manned by a soldier named and his loader Sara. They caught the flanking force in the forest and poured fire into them. Trees splintered under the hail of bullets. Aliens died among the undergrowth, but there were so many of them. "We need support on the east," shouted over the communications net. Lieutenant led a counterattack team. 20 soldiers with conventional and plasma rifles rushed to reinforce the position. The fighting became brutal at close range. Shot a warrior at 5 meters, watching his round pierce the alien's armor. The fired back even as he died, the plasma bolt burning shoulder. Private coordinated communications from the command post. Reports flooded in from all positions. He struggled to keep track of everything. "Captain, the west defensive line is taking heavy fire from aerial units. 2 soldiers down. They are requesting air defense support." Commander Shin activated the colony's missile batteries. Smart missiles streaked into the sky, engaging the aircraft. 3 alien craft exploded in fireballs. The rest pulled back but continued attacking from longer range. The guns continued their mechanical thunder. The sound had become constant, a drumbeat of war. Spent cartridge cases piled up around the gun positions. The brass gleamed in the sunlight. Private ran ammunition to the guns under fire. She was young and scared, but she kept moving. Each time she delivered a fresh container of bullets, she knew she was helping to hold the line. Plasma bolts exploded around her. She felt the heat of near misses but did not stop. Specialists worked frantically in the medical station. Wounded soldiers arrived constantly. Burns from plasma weapons, shrapnel wounds, broken bones. She worked with blood on her hands and tears in her eyes, trying to save everyone. The second assault lasted 30 minutes. It felt like hours. The aliens pushed hard on every front, trying to break through by sheer force. But the guns and the determined human defense held. Wherever they concentrated their forces, the old weapons cut them down. Where they spread out, human soldiers with modern weapons picked them off. Finally, they broke again. They retreated in disorder, leaving over 2,000 dead behind. The rest fell back to their landing zones, demoralized and confused. Captain surveyed the battlefield. His forces had held, but at greater cost this time. 40 soldiers were dead, over 100 wounded. The guns were still functioning, but ammunition was running critically low. Reported they had maybe 3,000 rounds remaining across all 3 weapons. On the command ship faced mutiny. His officers surrounded him, their voices angry and afraid. "We have lost over 2,000 soldiers," one officer said. "Against a primitive colony. This is madness. We must withdraw and request reinforcements." "We must recalibrate our shields before attacking again," another insisted. "Continuing like this is suicide." "I will not retreat," roared, but his voice carried desperation now, not authority. "We have 8,000 troops remaining. We will attack with everything. We will overwhelm them." "You will kill us all," an officer said quietly, "for your pride." The argument continued as felt his control slipping. Below on the planet, human and forces prepared for what everyone knew would be the final battle. One side would win. The other would be destroyed. There would be no third engagement. Night fell over new. In the darkness, soldiers on both sides checked their weapons and wondered if they would see another sunrise. The third dawn came cold and gray. Captain had not slept. Neither had most of his soldiers. They knew what was coming. They would throw everything they had at the colony. 8,000 troops against fewer than 400 able defenders. The ammunition for the guns would run out quickly. After that, it would be conventional weapons against superior numbers and technology. Walked among his soldiers, speaking to each position. He found at her gun. She had fallen asleep beside it, her hand still on the crank. He did not wake her. Let her rest while she could. Lieutenant Minu approached with bad news. "Corporal says we have ammunition for maybe 10 minutes of sustained fire. After that, the guns are useless." 10 minutes, repeated. "Then we make those 10 minutes count." On the command ship, High Commander prepared his final assault. His officers had spent the night arguing. Some demanded retreat. Others wanted to wait for shield. Overruled them all. He would not be remembered as the commander who lost to primitive humans. He would win or die trying. "All forces will attack simultaneously," he ordered. "Ground troops from all directions. Aerial units will suppress their defenses. Hover tanks will lead the assault. We advance until we reach their positions and destroy those cursed weapons personally." The preparations took 2 hours. As the force organized, something unexpected happened. A message arrived from the High Council. They had received reports of the battle. The footage had spread beyond military channels. Other species in the sector were watching. "You are ordered to cease combat operations immediately," the message stated. "The Empire cannot afford to lose more troops against a single human colony. Withdraw your forces. Negotiations will be attempted." Read the message 3 times, then he deleted it. He told no one. His pride would not allow retreat. He would achieve victory regardless of orders. The final assault began at midday. 8,000 troops moved forward in a coordinated attack. They came from north, south, east, and west simultaneously. The sky filled with aerial attack craft. The ground shook with the passage of hover tanks. It was the largest military operation that had mounted in decades. Captain watched the enemy approach. All weapons free, fire at will. The guns opened up immediately, cranked her weapon with mechanical precision. The barrels rotated. The thunder began. Lead bullets poured into the advancing forces. Aliens fell by the dozens, but there were so many of them. They kept coming, stepping over their dead, pushing forward. The ammunition counters dropped rapidly. 5 minutes of sustained fire, 6 minutes, 7. The guns were working perfectly, but there were too many targets and not enough bullets. At 8 minutes, his gun on the eastern position ran dry. He and Sora grabbed conventional weapons and continued fighting. At 9 minutes, gun stopped. Only his weapon still fired, the last gun in operation. They reached 200 meters from the human positions. Their officers screamed orders to push forward. The humans were nearly defeated. Victory was within reach. Then's gun fell silent. The last bullet was gone. She looked at the empty ammunition hopper, then at the advancing. She picked up her plasma rifle and prepared to fight to the end. But something changed in the formation. The advance slowed, then stopped. Warriors who had been charging moments ago now hesitated. Their officers shouted, but soldiers refused to move forward. They had watched 6,000 of their comrades die in 3 days. They had seen their shields fail and their armor pierced by primitive weapons. Fear had broken their discipline. On the command ship, its remaining officers acted. They had monitored the message from the High Council that tried to hide. Now they relieved him of command. Security troops escorted him away as he screamed protests. The new commander immediately ordered a full retreat. All forces withdraw to landing zones. Prepare for immediate departure. They pulled back, not an organized retreat but a panicked flight. They carried their wounded and abandoned their dead. Within an hour, the entire force had lifted off and returned to orbit. Within 2 hours, the fleet was preparing to jump to hyperspace. Captain stood in the valley where thousands had died. His soldiers were too exhausted to celebrate. They had survived but barely. 87 dead, 200 wounded. The colony's defenses were shattered. If they had attacked one more time, they would have been overrun. But they had not attacked. They had retreated. Humans had won. Ambassador received a transmission from the fleet. It was not from but from the new commander. The Empire withdraws its annexation demand. Your colony is recognized as sovereign territory. This incident will be reviewed by the High Council. No further military action will be taken. The message was cold and formal, but its meaning was clear. They were leaving. They had been defeated. Word of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light. The footage recorded by drones was leaked, and every species in the sector watched humans defend their colony with weapons from their primitive past. They saw advanced technology fail against simple mechanical devices. They saw a supposedly invincible empire retreat in disorder. Other civilizations that had accepted dominance began reconsidering their positions. If humans could resist, perhaps they could too. Ambassadors from a dozen species contacted Earth, requesting meetings. Some wanted alliances. Some wanted to purchase guns. All wanted to know more about humanity. Lieutenant Minu stood before the 3 guns, now silent and cooling. They had fired thousands of rounds over 3 days. They had killed thousands of alien soldiers. They had saved the colony and changed the balance of power in the sector. And they were over 400 years old, built by humans who never imagined their creations would be used in space warfare. "We should preserve these," he said to Captain. "They are not just weapons anymore. They are symbols." "Symbols of what?" asked. "That old wisdom still has value. That sometimes the simple solution works better than the complex one. That humanity's history is a strength, not a weakness." A memorial was built on New. The 3 guns were mounted on pedestals in the center of the colony. Plaques listed the names of the soldiers who died defending their home. Tourists from across the galaxy would eventually come to see the weapons that defeated an empire. Private visited the memorial every day. She would stand before her gun, the one she had cranked for hours while bullets flew around her. Sometimes she touched the metal, still able to feel the vibration of it firing. She had been just a private, scared and uncertain. Now people called her a hero. She did not feel like one. She felt like someone who had done what was necessary to survive. Colonel Park, promoted after the battle, began training programs for other Earth colonies. He taught them about unconventional warfare, about using old tactics against new enemies, about finding weaknesses in seemingly perfect defenses. His methods spread through human military forces across space. The Empire convened emergency sessions. Their entire military doctrine had to be reviewed. They began recalibrating shields on every ship and suit of armor. The process would take years and cost enormous resources. Other empires watched with interest, noting the vulnerability. High Commander was court-martialed and stripped of rank. He would spend the rest of his life in disgrace, remembered as the commander who lost to primitives. His career became a cautionary tale taught in military academies. Overseer Al transmitted one final message to Nu before the fleet departed. It was short and simple. "We underestimated you. That mistake will not be made again, but neither will we make the mistake of threatening you. Respect to the defenders of Nu." Months later, an Earth battleship arrived in the system. They brought reinforcements, supplies, and relief forces. They also brought journalists and historians who recorded every detail of the battle. The story would be told across human space. The day 3 guns stopped an empire. Lieutenant Minu wrote a report that became required reading in military schools. In it, he explained the lesson of Nu. Advanced technology creates specialized solutions for specific problems. In doing so, it can create new vulnerabilities. They spent thousands of years perfecting their defenses against energy weapons. They never considered that someone might use simple metal bullets fired by mechanical action. They forgot that war is not about having the best technology. It is about adapting, improvising, and exploiting enemy weaknesses. Years would pass before true peace was established with the. But from the day of the battle, they treated humans with caution and respect. The galaxy learned that Earth's children were not to be underestimated. They carried with them not just modern technology but 400,000 years of human history. Every trick, every tactic, every weapon ever devised. And they were willing to use any of them to defend their own. In the memorial hall on Nu, a simple inscription was carved below the guns. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. We remember those who proved this truth with their courage and sacrifice. The defenders of Nu, who held the line with brass and lead and iron will." The galaxy would never underestimate humans again.